I just got back from Thanksgiving break, spending in Florida, and I'm making espresso martinis with my two best friends, with an extra shot of vodka, because we have very, very important topics to cover: boys and bullshit. So we're kikiing, we're getting into it, and ding, my mom texts me. I think, okay, it's probably the latest high score of Mahjong or asking what the Netflix password is. So I ignore it. We get back to kikiing, and ding, my mom texts me again. I lean back and I check the messages, and I realize my mom sent me a photo and asking me to translate it. I zoom in and I read, Florida Department of Corrections, Victim Services, inmate status notification. The inmate listed below will be released 120 days. I'm 15. I've just been called to the witness stand at my stepfather's sentencing trial. This is the moment I've been waiting for after 8 years of child sexual abuse, after 12 months of trials. He's already been convicted. We won that part. But now, today, we found out his punishment. I see my mom, sister, and father on the left. Then I see Salvador, my abuser, on the right, handcuffed, shackled. Everyone's looking directly at me, the central victim of the case, waiting to hear my final words to put an end to this eerie chapter of our lives. And I make my statement. On March 26, 2008, a new life of mine begun. With the court and fear of everything, I had a tremendous amount of trouble sleeping and living my day-to-day life. I would just want to move away and begin a new year fresh. What this man did to me was what no child should go through. I am grateful to have my friend Christina to report this crime. Even though I do not have the power to terminate this part of my life, I can only hope for the court to fill my wishes of giving the appropriate punishment for Salvador Silva. Sincerely, Hiram. I get it from the stand and I take a seat in between my mom and sister. The courtroom is silent. The judge is ready with his decision. 20 years at the Florida State Prison and 5 years of parole. My mom and sister hold me tight, hug me, kiss me on my cheeks, their tears rolling onto my skin, grateful that their baby boy is safe and given the justice he deserves. Salvador stands up and, without looking back, follows the bailiff to the double doors to serve his punishment. We exit the courtroom and we're met with a bright Florida sun. For my mom and sister, this is just another reoccurring horror that made up the worst days of their lives. For me, for the first time in a really long time, I felt cared for by the sun. I'm feeling really optimistic about the future. I get to live and experience my first night of rest with no fear. Today is the best day of my life. 15 years pass, and life is a full key. I just got back from Thanksgiving break, spending in Florida, and I'm making espresso martinis with my two best friends, with an extra shot of vodka, because we have very, very important topics to cover: boys and bullshit. So we're kikiing, we're getting into it, and ding, my mom texts me. I think, okay, it's probably the latest high score of Mahjong or asking what the Netflix password is. So I ignore it. We get back to kikiing, and ding, my mom texts me again. I lean back and I check the messages, and I realize my mom sent me a photo and asking me to translate it. I zoom in and I read, Florida Department of Corrections, Victim Services, inmate status notification. The inmate listed below will be released 120 days. Give us your input how this crime has affected you and your family. Inmate Salvador Silva. The pit in my stomach feels exactly like it did when I was 14, when my stepfather was arrested in front of us and I had to break the truth to my mom. Now I have to do it again, tell her he's being released 4 years early, and that we only have one shot to advocate for our safety after he's released. I feel cheated by the state. I was promised 20 years of safety, and I'm seeing red because I needed those 4 years in order to finish building this imaginary fortress of protection for my mom. She still lives in the same house where the crime happened. In true Capricorn fashion, I focus on the truth. I have 4 months, and I'm not a little kid anymore. I have goddamn rights. I tell myself, if I can just submit a plea to victim services filled with evidence from my court case, I'm able to share how survivors need protection to live prosperous lives. And if I add every dollar and every minute my mother, sister, and myself spent on rebuilding the last 15 years of our lives, the state will be on our side. I fly back to Florida and I dive straight to my mom's porch, and I was able to bring back key evidence. Our final statements at the sentencing trial, the letter he wrote to my mom while he was in jail asking for money, breaking the no contact rule, and the video camera he used to film the sexual abuse. I know I needed to lean on the people that I loved. At 14, it was Christina who stood by me when my world came crumbling down. And at 31, it was my friends who broke down and explained every legal jargon that we found in the 300 plus pages of court records. It was my friend who sat with me on the phone in silence, waiting for me, being there for me to submit my restraining order request. I submit my victim's protection letter, and I wait for the day to arrive, knowing that I did my due diligence to protect myself and my family upon his release. I believed me and my family can finally cut all ties with him on my terms, permanently. However, I quickly learned that was not the case. When I got his forms of the release, what I saw made my jaw drop. The address he listed as his home was my home address. The same address, the same home where the crime happened 16 years ago. Absolutely the fuck not. Absolutely the fuck not. N-O, no. With ink monitoring and curfew, this man is expected to be at the address that he submitted to the court, meaning he planned to be at my house, my sanctuary, my home. Again, absolutely the fuck not. I'm a grown-ass adult. I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm living a full life, and I know my rights. And he is not going to affect me nor my family anymore. I call Cynthia, my victim services representative, my impromptu life coach. I call his parole officer, letting her know that he's breaking parole. And Cynthia calls Kissimmee Police Department, and after a back and forth of a week, he finally gets sent back to jail on the arrest of counterfeit and forgery, forcing him to change the address. Reading the words "in custody" every time I looked up Salvador on the Florida Sex Predator Offender Registry, my fingers would lock and my heart would pause. Up until this moment, I had to squeeze faith and strength out of thin air to persevere the impossible. I've had to believe in myself and push through every trial, every interrogation, and his imminent release. But the sun peeks in, and my fingers begin to move again. I catch my breath. Moving forward, my power will not be questioned. Not by me, nor by anyone else. When danger was resurfacing, it was me who put it at bay. After all, the sun is still there, and I still have a full life for her to live. Thank you.